Hello, everyone. People very rarely, if ever, act outside of character. People don't. They don't. They almost never ever act outside of their character. I'd say that 999 times out of 1,000, they don't act out of character. They just don't act out of character. It's very rare for people to act out of character. In fact, it might be even less than that. Maybe it's 9,999 times out of 10,000 people act in character. They rarely, if ever, act out of character. And maybe it's only about 1/100th of 1% of the population is even capable of acting out of character. Now we know that human beings have a lot of variation. They have there's a lot of variety and a lot of diversity in human beings. People have a lot of different kinds of characters. It's all sorts of types. People. All sorts. But within one human being, within a single person, that single person rarely, if ever, acts out of character. Once their character is established, it's pretty much set in stone, and it's very rare for anyone to ever act out of character. I'm one of the rare people who's capable of acting out of character. I'm flexible, I'm able to switch, able to make decisions, switch sides. I'm able to act out of character. Most people are not capable. It's rare if they ever act out of character. It just doesn't happen. So, breaking the mold that our Creator put us in. Breaking the mold. So rare. It's just such a rare thing. Now, let me give you some examples of some people that acted in character and who are incapable of acting out of character. We knew Biden was going to act in character. During the debates, he was just so badly behaved during the debates. He was so bad. And once his character was established, we knew he would act in character. We knew what he was like. We knew how he would act. And he did. He acted in character. What about Trump? I called this weeks ago. I said that Trump was going to declare victory ahead of time. And when he was asked if he would concede defeat gracefully, he was like, we'll see. In recent weeks, he said that he admires Xi Jinping and thinks that it was smart for him to become dictator for life, and that he would also like to be in office for life, and that he feels that he deserves it. He's entitled. He has a sense of entitlement. He's entitled and he deserves it because the Democrats tried to get him out of office. Like about half of America can't stand you that entitles you to be in office because they hate you, right? That doesn't make any sense. Like, if people hate you, you're entitled to be their leader. Give me a break. Sense of entitlement. When do we know that there's a sense of entitlement? That usually goes along with psychopathy. Psychopaths and also maybe sociopaths have a sense of entitlement. They're entitled. They deserve, because of their suffering, they deserve some special treatment or something special. It's a sense of entitlement. So, not that rare. It does occur. And if someone does suffer from sociopathy or psychopathy, it's very, very rare for them to act out of character. It becomes more rare than it is for the general public. It becomes more like 9,999 times out of 100, out of 10,000, out of 10,000 that they act in character, because it's just impossible for them to break the mold because of their derangement. So this was no surprise. Some news anchor said that this was just shocking. It was so shocking to him. He acted outraged and he acted totally shocked. Must have been born yesterday because none of the rest of us were shocked. It was no surprise. It was no surprise what Trump did, declaring victory ahead of time. And he would like to see all the votes cast by mail invalidated. He's calling it a fraud. Those are his words. It's a fraud. It's a fraud on our country for people to vote by mail. What he considers a fraud is for any Democratic vote to be counted. He doesn't want Democrats counted. He doesn't want them counted. He thinks it's a fraud because he wants to win. That's all he wants is to win. And he considers anything against him winning a fraud. He just labels it a fraud. And his followers eat it up. They all eat it up. So we're not surprised. We're not surprised that he's done this. Chris Christie came out against him and wasn't totally opposed to him, but didn't endorse him this time. He cares about the democratic process. Cares about the democratic process. So Chris Christie wasn't supportive this time of Trump's actions. But it was no surprise. We knew he was going to do this. Everyone knew. Everyone knew. It was no surprise. We went in with our eyes wide open, aware of what Trump would do. We knew he would declare victory ahead of time. Because he acts so deranged, the only thing we can do is just ignore his machinations. We have to ignore them. I know I endorsed him. Basically, I'm holding my nose, endorsing him. And the reason I was holding my nose and endorsed him is because of the threat of nuclear war. It's just too much. The threat of nuclear war is too great. We don't want to see millions of people killed. But if we undermine our democracy, and we undermine our democratic process, our enemies have already won. They've already won. We don't get a second chance. We don't get a second chance. Our democracy is over if we allow it to be undermined by anyone, for whatever reason, no matter how popular or famous they may be, or how entertaining they may be, or how well liked they are. America isn't about a popularity contest. America is not a popularity contest. We have rules of law, and there's a reason we have rules of law. There's a reason why we have laws protecting our rights. Our rights are not granted to us by the laws. Sorry, no. The laws are there to acknowledge our rights that we already are supposed to have. To acknowledge them. To acknowledge them and make sure they're honored and make sure it's enforced. We're not granted our rights by the laws. No way. No way. The flow of authority does not stem from the laws themselves. They're just there to make sure that our rights are acknowledged and enforced. Our rights are given to us by Goddess or by our Creator, whoever you may believe that may be. So, we're endowed. And if you're an atheist, you can even believe that we're endowed by nature with rights. There's nothing wrong with believing that. or even believing in the greatest good for the greatest number. There's nothing wrong with that either. Although, let's talk very briefly. Let's talk very briefly about democracy. Let's talk about democracy. Is democracy the best system? Is it? Is democracy the best system? And could we do better than democracy? Well, I'll tell you something. Maybe there's a problem with government altogether. Let's talk about government. Is there something wrong with human beings governing each other? Is there a problem with government? Should we have anarchy, for example? These are all questions that are very hard to answer. What we know about human beings is that they're not morally perfect. People do bad things. Evil things happen. If our goal, and it's a very big if our goal is to prevent bad things from happening to people, reduce suffering, reduce the bad, maximize the good whenever possible. If our objective is to minimize the negative and maximize the positive, if that is our goal, which it might not be for some people, but if that is our goal, then we have to seriously look at this and say, human beings are deeply flawed. Human beings have a lot of bad characteristics. Human beings are negative. So there's no way we can have perfection at all in government, because there's flawed human beings no matter what kind of government you have, no matter what form of government you have. It wouldn't be fair to be governed by computers either, because computers are programmed by human beings, right? Can't have governance by computer, which is another crazy idea. Sorry I even said it. People can be bad. They're not all bad, but they can be bad. And everyone has a bad side. Everyone has something bad about them. Everyone. And even me, no exceptions. All human beings have a bad side, endowed on us by our Creator. And this bad side comes out sometimes. It can't change it, can't hide it, can't disguise it. The bad always comes out. So government is always going to have some bad things about it. There's always going to be bad. There's always going to be somebody getting hurt. That's because there's always going to be somebody getting hurt, and it's because there's so much bad in human beings. Human beings are so bad. They're always bad. Human beings are always bad. They're always ill-behaved. And so governance, there's always going to be bad government. Always. Doesn't matter what you pick. You can pick anything. You can pick communism. You can pick capitalism. You can pick democratic republic. You can pick pure democracy. You can pick a king or a queen. Anything. Any form of government that you can think of. It's always, always, always going to be bad. As long as there's human beings governing other human beings, it's always going to be bad. So that can't be eliminated. Can't be eliminated. Whole point of government, so far as we know, it's not for a few elite people to have power and control and to enjoy prestige over others and control over others. No, it's not for power for a privileged few. The whole point of governance and government is to provide for the common good. And most people, the vast majority of people, want good government. They don't want bad government. They just don't. They're not looking forward to a bad government. They want good for people. And most people want the greatest good for the greatest number. Most people want good. So let's talk about government. What is the best form of government? Well, what about democracy? What do we know about democracy? Is it fair for a majority, a large majority, to impose their beliefs, their viewpoints, their will on a minority? Is it fair? Is it fair for a majority to impose their will on the minority? Is majority rule really the best system? Think about it. Is majority rule really the best system? Is it fair for a majority to discriminate against a minority of any sort? Is that fair? And are there any people who support protecting minorities? Would argue that no, it isn't fair. It isn't fair for a majority to impose their will on a minority. So democracy is deeply flawed. And here's another thing you don't think about. Are the majority actually very wise? Are the majority wise? Do they have greater wisdom than minority groups? Are the majority actually more wise? And do they have a greater moral standing or moral moral compass? Do they have a better moral compass than a minority? And should they make decisions for minorities? Are the majority, the masses, are they more wise than outlying groups of people? And are the majority or the masses even capable of self-governance? Do they do a good job? I would say, based on the way this election goes, people show a lack of judgment, a lack of good judgment, and I don't even think that the majority is even capable of ruling. Our forefathers took this into consideration, which is why we have a democratic republic. There's representative government, and there's checks and balances. Yes, it's democratically based, but it's not a pure democracy. And I would argue that checks and balances are good because you can still provide for the common good. You can still provide for the common good for the people. You can still take care of people without crossing the line. Most of the time, not always, but most of the time, crossing the line into tyranny or micromanaging people or too much control. That's not always true. We've gotten a lot of micromanagement out of our government. We've got a lot of government control now. A lot. The two parties have worked together in cooperation and handshaking to bring a tyrannical government upon us that's got huge control, huge taxes, huge government control over people's lives, huge micromanagement of people. Been micromanaged by the government. Seen it firsthand. I've seen it, what they do, how they treat people. So this behemoth created out of the two-party system, this monster of government, it's a result of a democratic republic. And we had checks and balances to prevent anyone from making government too big or going too far with the level of governance or the form of government. We had checks and balances in place. And the forefathers, their worst nightmare was a two-party system. They didn't want a two-party system at all. They spoke out against there being a two-party system, and they didn't want one. So, but then there was a two-party system eventually. And it was certain acts of Congress back in the 1950s caused two-party system to be promoted and other forms of governance to be sort of put down, So what can we gather from this? What do we know about this two-party system? Why is it at the top of each ballot you see the two parties right at the top? They're given preference. They're given preference by our government. They're given preference, and they're given special privileges, and the other parties are just considered, especially they put libertarians at the bottom of the ballot. Libertarian is probably the largest third party, and yet it gets put near the bottom. It gets the least support and the least consideration. So what do we know about this? Well, there's nothing that's perfect. We've already gone over this. There's no form of governance that's perfect. But how do you feel, just looking at it from another point of view or perspective, how do you feel about a very small minority, having the control and a small minority imposing their wills on the majority? One could argue that a small minority imposing their wills on a majority is even worse than majority rule. It's even worse. Because if you're thinking of the greatest good for the greatest number, people should be self-governed, right? Should be the greatest number in control. The greatest number should not be disenfranchised. They should have a say. Everyone should have a say, and the majority should be in control because you want to have as many people be given a chance to have control over their lives and their government as possible. That's the whole point of democracy. The whole point of democracy is to have as many people have control over their lives as possible. Could be that the two-party system has hurt our country in such a way that we're headed for a meltdown, and that we could have a divided country, just split it right in half, and have the Dems take one half, have the Republicans take the other half, and have two separate countries and two separate lives. And the only way that could happen is if there was a civil war. People are not just going to have a handshake and divide the country in half and then go their separate ways. That's not going to happen, and there's going to be people who really strongly believe in keeping the country together no matter what. So this is a problem. This is a real problem. And just telling you right now, if you decide to flaunt and go against and try to foil our democratically elected form of government, our democratic republic. If you try to undermine our democratic republic, then there goes your country. Your country is gone. It's gone. There goes your country. You don't have a country left to go back to if you undermine And it sets a dangerous precedent. We could have a series of dictators. They could even be generational. It could be just like Kim Jong-un. It could be like having a kings and queens again. It's just like a king or a queen, a dictator for life. Its kids also rule. That's basically monarchy or an empire. And once you have a monarchy or an empire, they begin acting and behaving like a monarchy or an empire. There's wars, and there's ambition, blind ambition. There's people making war all around the world, accumulating colonies and accumulating satellite countries, their own countries that become part of your empire and have to pay taxes to you, have to give you goods and services, have to show loyalty and subservience to you. You took them by force, and you have power and control. Look at the history of Europe. So many empires, especially the British Empire. That's what happens when you have a monarchy or an empire. You have blind ambition when you have kings and queens. You have blind ambition, blind control, people grasping for power all over the world. No one is safe. It's not just America. No one is safe. Your country isn't safe if you have a king or a queen, because they're going to invade. They're going to take, and they're going to grab your land for themselves. They're going to grab your country for themselves. They're going to take control over your government, have power. That's what happens with a monarchy. So the idea of a very small minority ruling a majority is even worse. That's even worse. Democratic Republic is the best we've got. It's the best of both worlds. It's an attempt to have as little government as possible while still being able to provide for the common good. What should be the role of government? How big should government be? Should government solve all your problems for you? Government should provide roads. You should provide infrastructure. Other than roads and infrastructure and also the common defense. Obviously, we have to have a military. Common defense. You don't have a country without a military. Other than that, there's really no point in having government. You can or can't possibly choose to have government care for the elderly and the mentally ill. That's probably a good thing. It's probably a good thing to take care of the elderly and the mentally ill. It's probably a good idea. I know they didn't have that in the past. And people were expected to take care of their parents. But it's probably a good idea to provide that sort of service with government. And also, like I said, to provide roads. And that's it. Go beyond that, and it's more than people can afford in taxes. It's more than people can afford in taxes, and it becomes tyrannical. So it's really good to have checks and balances if you can make it work, and don't ignore checks and balances. And it's really good to have less government control if you can, while still providing for basic services so you can have a country. And so, is it right for Trump to establish himself as a king of America? Is it right for him to be ruler for life? Is it right for him to say that he deserves, that he has a sense of entitlement, he's entitled to be ruler for life? I don't think so. And even if it means millions and millions of people dying in a nuclear war, or even worse, China coming into our country and trying to take over, that chance that they could try to take over. If we foil the will of the people, if we ignore our democratic form of government, then our enemies have already won. So, even if Biden is the worst possible choice, the worst possible candidate, and Kamala is even worse than he is, and Biden doesn't have long for this world, we still have to honor people who voted for him. Because without that, we really don't have a democratic form of government anymore. We don't have a democratic republic. We don't have a democratically elected officials that do the will of the majority of the people anymore. We don't have the most people in control of their own lives anymore. Instead, we have a monarchy, and we know what happens with monarchies. We already know. So that's it. Just think about this. Think about what Trump has done. We knew he was going to do it. Both candidates are equally bad. Both of them are bad. And we knew they were bad. We knew we weren't being given much of a choice, and that the elite had hand-picked. They're the chosen ones, like Trump said. Trump said, "I am the chosen one." And he meant it because he knew he was hand-picked and hand-chosen by the elite. He wasn't. It's not the chosen one. He hasn't been chosen by God. He hasn't been chosen by God. He has been hand-chosen and hand-picked by the elite. That's what he means by chosen one. He was chosen by the elite to lead us. And Biden's been chosen as his successor. And this whole thing is a drama to entertain the masses, to entertain the public, American public. All of this is happening to entertain us. And Trump is the entertainer. He's the character that's entertaining us. And hand-chosen to entertain us, to keep us distracted, and to make us crazy. And fighting with each other. Just fighting with each other. Why? People now are saying that there's going to be rioting in the streets and people are going to be killing each other. Hasn't happened yet. Hasn't happened yet because there haven't been any final results, and there hasn't been a legal battle like Trump would like. There hasn't gone to the Supreme Court. There haven't been any rulings yet. We're just in the early stages, so it hasn't been killing yet, and there hasn't been mass chaos yet. Hasn't happened yet. We're still Americans. Still Americans. Even the rioters are still Americans. And we're all sort of holding our breath. We're all sort of holding our breath in case those of you in other countries would like to know what's going on. There was no chaos at all on Election Day. The guys with guns didn't show up at the polls. And there was no voter intimidation. There was nothing that they said was going to happen. None of it. All the conspiracy theories fell flat. We're still Americans. The real question is what's going to happen after a victor is actually officially declared. If both sides are claiming victory, what's going to happen then? Then there could be chaos. Then there could be riots. Then there could be people killing each other. But for now, things are relatively peaceful. We have a calm before the storm, or we're in the eye of the hurricane where we have a breather and we don't know what's going to happen next. So keep watching. It's boring. Just feel like tuning out until you hear the next announcement. It's going to take a long time. They said they should know by Thursday whether there's a winner, but all the votes altogether in the whole country won't be all counted until Christmas, or Modrinicht, whichever you prefer. Won't be until then that all the votes will be in, I don't think. So keep watching. Don't hold your breath. It's too long to hold your breath. And still believe that our country, that we needed to vote against Biden, not for Trump so specifically, but against Biden because so many lives could be lost. It's such a huge potential for loss of life. It's just a huge potential for the loss of life and the loss of our country. Media's trying to downplay it and saying on CBS today, well, there's been claims that the Democrats are actually socialists, and this is just ridiculous. They're not socialists, and just ignore the man behind the curtain. But we know that Kamala Harris is a socialist. It's just a fact. It's a fact. She's socialist in all but name. She hasn't used the word socialist, but she isn't honest, and she's socialist in all but name. So we know there's socialists in the Democratic Party. Real question is, if socialists come to power, what will they do? Because our country, it would take an amendment to the Constitution. Our country is never going to eliminate capitalism. We're never going to become a socialist country unless someone invades and takes over. And somebody has to be in office, open the doors to them, and say, come in, come in. So that's the real danger. The real danger is someone coming in and taking over our country from the outside, a foreign invasion. Because it's never going to happen from the inside. It just won't. I think our country would have been very, very safe under Bernie Sanders. I don't trust Kamala Harris at all. She took money from China. I don't trust her as far as I can throw her. So, keep watching the news. Try to figure out what's happening. Speak out against Trump. Speak out against what he's doing. Even though knew he was going to do it, and knew he was incapable of acting any differently. He's got to learn. He's got to learn, and he's got to be censured. Not censored, censured. There's a difference. And I'll see you next time.